Welcome to Reform Thinking. I am your host, and I am glad you have pulled up a chair for this session. This is the show where we take those massive, leather-bound theological works, you know the ones, they're probably sitting on a high shelf somewhere gathering dust, and we open them up. We want to see if the ink on those pages still speaks to the reality of our lives today. We are really asking the question, does this old theology actually work?
It is good to be with you. And that question, I think, is just the right one to ask. We are not doing this for the sake of nostalgia or anything like that.
Right. It's not a museum tour.
No, not at all. We are doing it because we believe these texts hold the keys to understanding who God is and just as much who we are. As always, our framework here is, it's specific.
It is.
We are looking at these things through the lens of the Protestant Reformation, and for us, the Westminster Standards, we want to see the sovereignty of God in salvation, not just as some abstract concept, but as the actual ground we stand on.
We want to get to the steel beams of the faith. And today, we are looking at a sermon by a man who is often considered the greatest mind America has ever produced, Jonathan Edwards.
Jonathan Edwards. Yeah, that's a name that brings a lot of baggage with it, doesn't it?
It really does. I think if you stop the average person on the street, or maybe even the average churchgoer, and ask them about Edwards, you'd get one answer.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
They'd say, oh, he's the sinners in the hands of an angry God guy.
Yep, every time.
They picture this grim, angry man in a white wig dangling a spider over a candle, just trying to scare people into heaven.
That's the caricature that has stuck for centuries. And it's so unfortunate because it misses the vast majority of who Edwards was.
It really does.
Yes, he preached on hell. He absolutely believed it was real. But Edwards was also a philosopher. He was a scientist who studied spiders and light. And he was a pastor who was deeply concerned with the affections, the emotions of the Christian life. He wasn't just trying to scare people. He was trying to wake them up to reality.
And in the text we are looking at today, we definitely see a different side of him. We see Edwards, the physician of the soul. He is dealing with a very tender subject, the durability of Christian love. The sermon is titled, Charity or True Grace, Not to be Overthrown by Opposition.
And it's a study on the doctrine that we, in our Reform circles, often call the perseverance of the saints.
Right.
But Edwards approaches it in a way that is, it's pretty unique. He doesn't start with a high theological treatise, which is what you might expect.
No, he goes somewhere else entirely.
He starts with 1 Corinthians 13.7.
The love chapter. That's usually wedding territory.
It is. That's what we hear, right?
Right.
But Edwards sees something much stronger than wedding vows in it. He focuses on just one phrase from that verse. Charity endureth all things.
So let's set the stage here. When I hear love endures all things, I immediately think of the horizontal relationships in my life.
Yeah.
I think about my kids driving me crazy, or a coworker who chews too loudly, or a spouse who forgets to put gas in the car. I just think enduring means putting up with annoying behavior without exploding.
And that's the social application. And look, it's valid. Patience is a virtue, no question.
But that's not what he's getting at.
No. Edwards argues that Paul, and more than that, the Holy Spirit inspiring Paul, are doing much heavier lifting here. This isn't just about having a long fuse with difficult people. This is about the spiritual survival of grace itself.
Survival, that puts a completely different spin on it.
It does. Edwards is arguing that the grace of God in a human heart is an indestructible substance. It is facing a world, and crucially, a heart that is determined to kill it.
Wow.
So when the text says it endures, it means it survives an onslaught. It is about the ability of God's work to stay alive in a hostile environment.
That raises the stakes significantly. So let's look at the text itself. In 1 Corinthians 13, verse 7, Paul lists a few things that sound suspiciously similar.
They do, on the surface.
He says, charity suffereth long, then he says it beareth all things, and then endureth all things. I have to be the skeptic here for a minute. Is Paul just using a thesaurus? Is he just repeating himself for emphasis, or is there a real difference here?
It is a fair question. To the modern ear, bearing and enduring sound almost like synonyms.
Right.
But Edwards performs a very careful textual analysis here. He argues that these are distinct aspects of how grace operates. They're not the same thing.
So break it down for us. What is the distinction he makes?
Well, let's take the first one. Suffereth long. Edwards connects this specifically to the injuries we receive from other people.
Okay.
That's the patience you mentioned earlier. It is the ability to be wronged and not retaliate. That is the horizontal aspect. It's about personal slights and offenses.
Okay, so that covers the people or difficult part of life. What about the next one? Beareth all things.
Edwards interprets bearing as a willingness to carry a burden. Think of a pack mule or a soldier with a heavy rucksack.
So it's active.
It's active. It refers to the willingness to suffer for Christ's sake without quitting your duty. It is the spirit that says, this is heavy, this hurts, but I am not going to drop the load God has given me. It's about perseverance in a task.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It is about capacity for hardship. But then we get to the main point of this sermon, endureth all things. How is that different from carrying a burden?
This is where it gets interesting. The Greek word here implies something structural. It's a different idea.
Structural.
Yes. Edwards says it signifies the lasting and abiding nature of grace. If we translate it literally, as he does, it means charity remains under all things.
Remains under. I like that image. It's very passive, in a way.
It's visual, isn't it? Imagine a bridge support or a pillar you pile weight on top of it, enormous pressure. Enduring, in this sense, doesn't mean the pillar is actively doing something. It means the pillar doesn't crumble. It stays where it was put.
I see.
Or imagine a soldier in a foxhole under heavy artillery bombardment.
The shelling is the opposition.
Correct. To endure in that scenario doesn't mean you charge the hill. It doesn't mean you fight back. It means you don't run away. You don't desert your post. You don't curl up and give up. You remain in the trench until the shelling stops. When the smoke clears, you are still there.
So this is about the permanence of the Holy Spirit's work. It is about the structural integrity of this new nature.
That is the logic. Edwards connects this directly to faith and hope. He says faith overcomes the world and hope looks to the weight of glory. Charity or love is the principle that nurtures these things.
It's the soil they grow in.
Good way to put it. Because love keeps faith and hope alive, the grace in a Christian's heart cannot be conquered. It is designed by God to be shockproof.
So the thesis statement for this entire deep dive is what Edwards says so plainly. True Christian grace cannot be overthrown by anything that opposes it.
That is the doctrine in a nutshell.
But there is a shadow side to that statement, isn't there? I mean, if you say something cannot be overthrown, you are admitting right out of the gate that there are forces actively trying to overthrow it.
Absolutely.
You don't talk about the structural integrity of a bunker unless you fully expect bombs to fall on it.
That is the reality Edwards wants us to face. The Christian life is not a peaceful meadow, it is a siege. And he details this coalition of enemies that are constantly working to destroy the grace in a believer's heart.
He lists three main enemies. Let's walk through them because I think we tend to underestimate them. The first one he lists is the devils.
And note the plural. He isn't just talking about Satan as some abstract figurehead. He is talking about a kingdom, an organization.
A hierarchy of opposition.
Yes, and he describes them as artful, intelligent, active, mighty, and implacable. Each of those words is chosen carefully.
Implacable. That is a chilling word. It means you can't negotiate with them. You can't sign a peace treaty.
There is no middle ground. They want you dead, spiritually speaking. Edwards describes them as besieging the soul. Think of a medieval city surrounded by a vast army that is cutting off the food supply, poisoning the water, and launching flaming arrows over the walls day and night.
That's a powerful image.
They are constantly looking for a weakness in the gate. They are intelligent. They have had thousands of years to study human nature. They know exactly which buttons to push for you specifically. They're not generic in their attacks.
That is the spiritual dimension. Then he moves on and lists the world.
And this is the environment we live in, the air we breathe. The world opposes grace in two main ways, according to Edwards.
What are they?
First, by allurements. It tries to seduce the believer. Look at this money, look at this fame, look at this comfort. Why carry that heavy cross when you can have all this?
So it's the carrot.
It's the carrot. And then there's the stick, direct opposition, persecution, mockery. The world tries to make the cost of following Christ so high that you will just give up. It wants to shame you out of your faith.
But the third enemy,
Mm-hmm.
this is the one that really stopped me in my tracks reading this sermon. Edwards calls it the worst enemy. And it is not the devil. It is not the culture.
It is the flesh, the enemy within.
This is such a hard pill to swallow.
Huh.
We like to think of ourselves as the good guys in the story.
Yeah.
You know, we're the victims of the devil or the victims of a bad culture. But Edwards says the traitor is inside the house.
He is right, though, isn't he? If we are truly honest with ourselves, we carry enemies inside our own chest. Edwards talks about evil thoughts, corruptions, and sinful inclinations that still hold a footing in the heart even after conversion.
It is like a sleeper cell?
Precisely. You can lock the doors against the world. You can resist the devil and he will flee from you. But you cannot run away from your own heart. Wherever you go, there you are, and there your sin is.
So these internal corruptions are constantly trying to sabotage the work of grace. They want to open the gates to the enemy outside.
They do. They're sympathetic to the cause of the enemy.
So you have the most powerful spiritual beings in the universe attacking you from the outside. A culture designed to distract and shame you, and your own heart trying to betray you from the inside. When you stack it all up like that, it makes grace seem incredibly fragile.
It does. It looks like it doesn't stand a chance. And Edwards uses some metaphors here that are just stunning. They are beautiful, but they are also terrifying if you think about the physics of them.
Let's look at those, because he paints a picture of just how impossible this survival seems from a human perspective. He says grace in the midst of this opposition is like a spark of fire encompassed with swelling ocean billows.
Just picture that for a second. You are in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean during a hurricane. The waves are 30, 40 feet high. It is a raging storm. And floating on the water is a single, tiny spark.
Physics says that spark is gone in a nanosecond.
It should be extinguished before you can even blink. There's no scenario where it survives. Or take his other image. A flake of snow falling into a burning volcano.
I mean, that's even more extreme.
Think about the heat of a volcano. We are talking about magma that is over 1,000 degrees. The radiant heat alone should vaporize a snowflake when it is still 100 feet in the air.
It is a physical impossibility. A snowflake cannot exist in a volcano. It's a contradiction.
And yet, Edward says, that is the picture of the Christian soul. A delicate white snowflake of grace sitting right in the mouth of the volcano of hell and corruption. And yet it does not melt.
He also compares it to a rich jewel of gold in a fiery furnace. The fire is hot enough to melt iron, but the jewel remains solid.
Edwards is using these impossible images to drive home one single point. The preservation of grace is a miracle. It is not a natural outcome.
It's supernatural.
It's entirely supernatural. If you look at the power of the devil, the weight of the world, and the sickness of our own flesh, and then you look at this little seed of grace, the odds are zero. It shouldn't work.
It shouldn't.
But it does.
He also zooms out from the individual to history. He calls the church God's post, this small besieged outpost in enemy territory.
And he points to Israel and Egypt. Think about that dynamic for a moment. You have the mightiest empire on earth at the time. Pharaoh has the chariots, the gods, the economy, the absolute authority. And he decides to extirpate the Hebrews.
To wipe them out.
He wants to wipe them out. He throws the babies in the river. He enslaves the adults. He works them to death.
By all rights, the Hebrew people should have vanished from history. They should be a footnote, another tribe assimilated or destroyed.
But they remained. The bush burned, but it was not consumed. Or look at David. Edwards mentions him being hunted like a partridge. You have King Saul with a standing army combing the wilderness for one shepherd boy.
It's a massive imbalance of power.
Completely. David is living in caves. He is isolated. He is terrified. He is outnumbered 1,000 to 1.
And yet Saul falls and David stands.
And the church, under the Roman persecutions, Nero, Diocletian, they tried to stamp out the superstition called Christianity. They fed believers to lions. They burned them as torches for their garden parties. Millions were killed. The snowflake was well and truly in the volcano.
But the volcano went cold, and the snowflake is still here.
That's the historical record.
This leads us right to the segment I want to call the impossible survival. We have established the paradox. The physics don't work. So how does the snowflake win? How is that even possible?
Edwards argues that despite being brought to the brink of utter ruin, grace always lives. It can be pushed to the edge, but it never goes over. And he uses these biblical case studies to prove this physics-defying reality.
Let's re-examine some of these. I think we gloss over a story like Noah's Ark because we saw it in nursery cartoons. But Edwards treats it as a study in, hydrodynamics.
He does. Think about the flood. The waters rose above the highest mountain peaks. The entire world was submerged. The pressure of that destruction was total. It was a global cataclysm.
Nothing survived.
Except the ark. And Edwards points out a simple fact. The waters could not rise above the ark.
It was buoyant.
The more the waters of judgment rose, the higher the ark was lifted. It was designed to stay on top. The destruction that swallowed the whole world only lifted the ark closer to heaven. It could not be submerged.
Then there is Jonah. That is a different kind of horror altogether.
Oh, that is the ultimate example of being on the brink of utter ruin. In fact, he's past the brink. Jonah is thrown overboard in a storm. He sinks. He is swallowed by a great fish. He is in the belly of a beast in the crushing depths of the ocean. he is as good as dead.
There is no way out of that situation.
None. If you were a betting man watching that scene, you would lose your money betting on Jonah's survival.
Absolutely.
And yet, he was brought up alive. The grace in him, the calling of God on his life, was not digested. It survived the acid of the stomach and the pressure of the deep. Or look at the disciples in the boat with Christ.
The storm of the Sea of Galilee.
The waves were crashing over the sides, covering the ship. The boat was filling up with water. In any normal situation, that boat sinks. It's a matter of minutes.
But the ship could not sink. And the reason is so simple.
Why? Because the master of the ocean was sleeping on a cushion in the stern.
The presence of Christ altered the physical outcome.
That's it. And the outcome isn't just survival. We have to be clear about this. It is not that the Christian barely drags themselves across the finish line, battered and broken and bleeding.
It is about victory.
It is about triumph. Edwards points out that David didn't just survive the caves, he eventually sat on the throne of Israel. Grace endures these shocks to eventually reign. The struggle is actually part of the trajectory toward the crown. The opposition serves a purpose.
Now, I have to play the skeptic again. Or maybe just the realist. Because I know there's a listener right now who is nodding along but has this knot in their stomach.
I know that feeling.
They are thinking, okay, you say grace never fails. You say it endures all things. But I know a guy. I know a woman. They were an elder in my church. They were a worship leader. They were on fire for God. And then they left. They cheated. They lied. They renounced the faith. And they never came back. We all know those stories.
We all do, and they are heartbreaking and confusing.
So how does Edwards explain that? If grace is indestructible, why did their grace break? Did the volcano finally melt the snowflake?
That is the critical question. And Edwards answers it with a distinction that is, well, it's classic Reformed theology. He distinguishes between true grace and counterfeit grace.
Counterfeit grace, fake gold.
Yes. His argument is simple, but it's devastating. If the grace failed, it was never true grace to begin with. It was an imitation, it looked like the real thing, it might have felt like the real thing for a time, but it did not have the chemical composition of the real thing. It was fool's gold.
That is a scary thought. It means we can be deceived about our own state. It means other people can be.
It does, which is why Edwards doesn't just leave it there. He gives us diagnostic tests. He wants us to be able to tell the difference in ourselves and in what we see in others.
So let's run a little simulation here. Let's imagine a guy named Bob. Bob goes to church, he sings the songs, he puts money in the plate. Let's see if Bob has true grace or false grace, according to Edwards. What is the first test?
The first test is depth. Edwards says false grace is superficial. It is like paint on a piece of wood. It covers the outside. It might even look beautiful, but the wood underneath hasn't changed its nature.
So Bob might get emotional during a worship song.
He might cry. He might get excited about a new sermon series. He might change his behavior for a while. But it hasn't reached the bottom of the heart, as Edwards puts it. It's a surface-level change.
So for Bob with false grace, the religion is an additive. It is an accessory he puts on. For Bob with true grace, it is a new nature.
That's a great way to say it. True grace changes the molecular structure of the human heart. It is not just paint. It is a transformation of the wood into stone, or as the Bible says, the stone into flesh. It's a new creation.
Okay, what is the second test? This one seems the most practical, the most visible.
The relation to sin. This is crucial. Edwards says that false grace leaves corruption unmortified.
Unmortified, that means not killed.
Right. Bob with false grace might struggle with a particular sin, say greed or lust. And his new religious feelings might give that sin a slight wound, as Edwards describes it.
What does that look like?
He might feel guilty about it. He might stop acting on it for a few months because he wants to be a good Christian. But the root of the sin is just stunned. It is hiding. It heals itself in the dark. And eventually, it comes back with a vengeance and reigns over him again.
And true grace, how does that deal with sin?
True grace deals a mortal wound to sin. It strikes at the vitals. Think of it like a hunter shooting a deer. The deer might run for another mile. It might still be on its feet, but it has been shot in the heart. It is going to die.
It's a fatal blow.
It's a fatal blow. The Christian still sins, but the dominion of sin is broken. The war has turned. Bob, with true grace, hates his sin in a way that Bob, with false grace, never really does. He might be inconvenienced by his sin, but he doesn't hate it as his mortal enemy.
That is a very helpful distinction. A mortal wound versus a flesh wound. What about the third test he gives?
Prayer. Edwards observes that false grace is not diligent in prayer. And if you think about it, why would it be? False grace is based on human effort or human emotion. It relies on itself.
So Bob, with false grace, thinks he can handle it on his own. I got this.
I got this. Or he only prays when he is in deep trouble as a last resort. But true grace lays hold on divine strength. The person with true grace knows they are a snowflake in a volcano. They know they cannot survive on their own for 5 minutes, so they are constantly crying out to God for help. They are dependent.
And the final test he mentions is desire.
Yes. And this is the great paradox of assurance. False grace is often very confident, very cocky. It is careless. It assumes, I walked an aisle, I signed a card, I had an experience, so I'm safe. It doesn't really worry about falling away.
He is presumptuous.
It is. But true grace hungers and thirsts for perseverance. It fears falling. The person with true grace is often the one asking the hard questions. Am I real? God, please keep me. Don't let me go. They are watchful. They value the treasure, so they are terrified of losing it.
So the takeaway here is, a counterfeit bill will tear, a real one won't. If it breaks, it was not gold to begin with. True grace is, by its very definition, an enduring substance.
That's his argument, correct.
Okay, so we have defined what it is. We have separated the true from the false. But now we have to get to the bedrock, the big question. Why? Why does true grace endure? Is it because the true Christian is just a better person? Is it because they have stronger willpower or more moral fiber?
Absolutely not. And Edwards is adamant about this. If that were the case, we would all be doomed. He is very clear. It is not the inherent strength of the grace itself, as if God gave us a super battery that never runs out. It is about God's purpose to uphold it.
He quotes 1 Peter 1.5, which is such a key verse for this whole idea.
Kept by the power of God through faith. The active verb is kept. The agent is the power of God. Our faith is the instrument, but his strength is the cause.
And he uses Adam to make this point so clearly.
He does. It's a brilliant argument. Think about Adam in the Garden of Eden. He had perfect holiness. He had no internal corruption. There was no flesh fighting against him. He was stronger, purer, and in a better environment than any of us will ever be in this life.
And yet he fell.
He fell. He lost his standing. So Edwards argues, if Adam, in his perfection, could not keep himself, how can we, in our brokenness, possibly keep ourselves? If it depended on our strength, we would fall 1,000 times faster than Adam did.
So if Adam could not keep himself, we definitely cannot.
We have zero chance. Less than zero.
So this is where Edwards lays out what I want to call the theological fortress. He gives us 7 pillars, 7 arguments for why God keeps us. And this is really where the Reformed worldview shines. It takes the burden completely off our shoulders and puts it squarely on God's. Let's walk through these 7 pillars.
Let's do it. Pillar number 1 is the promise.
This is about God's reputation, his character.
It is. God has explicitly promised to keep his people. It's not something we have to guess about. Edwards cites Jeremiah 32.4. God says, I will put my fear in their hearts, that they shall not depart from me.
I want to pause on the grammar there. That they shall not depart. It is not, I hope they don't depart, or I'll help them not to depart.
It is a statement of divine effect. God is the active agent. He puts the fear in the heart so that the result is guaranteed, its cause and effect. Or think of John 10.28, Christ speaking, neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand.
You have to ask, who is strong enough to open God's hand?
Nobody. So we are held by a promise from a God who cannot lie. That's pillar 1.
Okay, pillar number 2, the completeness of redemption.
This is a logical argument about the work of Jesus. If Christ came to redeem us, but he left us liable to fall away and lose that salvation, then his redemption is, by definition, incomplete.
Explain that a little more.
Well, think about it. Adam fell and brought death. If Jesus comes as the second Adam to fix what was broken, but he leaves us a state where we can still fall and die eternally, then he hasn't really fixed the core problem.
He's just given us a second chance to fail like Adam did.
Exactly. He's just reset the game. Edwards argues that Christ came to do what Adam could not. He came to secure a salvation that was permanent. If he saves you today but loses you tomorrow, he is not a perfect savior. His work can be undone.
That is a strong argument. Pillar number 3, the covenant of grace.
We need to distinguish this from the covenant of works. The arrangement with Adam was a covenant of works. The terms were simple. Do this and live. It relied entirely on human will and human obedience.
And it failed because the human will failed.
Spectacularly. The new covenant, the covenant of grace, cannot fail for one simple reason. It does not rely on us. It relies on a surety, and that surety is Christ. Edwards says it is ordered in all things and sure. It isn't a shaky agreement that depends on your performance this week. It is a contract signed in the blood of the Son of God.
That word surety leads us right into pillar 4. What exactly is a surety in this context?
Think of it like a cosigner on a massive unpayable loan, but it's even stronger than that. If you have a cosigner and you default, they have to pay. In the ancient sense, a surety was someone who put their own life up as collateral for another's debt or promise.
So Adam was our first surety.
Adam was the surety for all of humanity in the first covenant, and he defaulted. The result was that we all went to debtor's prison, so to speak.
And Christ.
Christ is the second surety. And here's the absolute key. He has already paid the debt. He has already persevered. He lived the perfect life we couldn't. He died the death we owed. He rose again. He is seated in heaven. He has finished the work.
So because he made it through, we make it through.
We are attached to him. We are united with him. Because the head of the body, Christ, stood firm and was victorious, the body, which is us, must also stand. You cannot have a living, triumphant head and a dead, defeated body. It is biologically and theologically impossible. We are confirmed in him.
Okay, pillar number 5. Justification. This is a courtroom term.
It is. Justification means a full, final, legal acquittal. Imagine you are in a court, accused of treason. The evidence is overwhelming, but the judge slams the gavel and says, "Not guilty, all charges dropped, record expunged, you are free to go."
But Edwards adds a nuance here that's really important.
He argues, you cannot be fully acquitted of guilt and entitled to eternal life today if that title can be revoked tomorrow. Imagine a judge saying, "You are innocent, you are free. But if you mess up next week, we are going to bring back all the old charges and hang you for them."
That is double jeopardy. It's unjust.
It is. If your legal status can be revoked, you were not really justified. You were just on probation. Edward says justification is a permanent change of status. You move from guilty to son. A son might get disciplined, he might get grounded, but he doesn't get fired from the family.
Pillar number 6, union with Christ. This feels related to the surety argument.
It's the organic side of that legal reality. It goes back to a verse like Galatians 2:20. I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. A believer shares in Christ's own resurrection life. Since Christ cannot die again, as Paul says, death has no more dominion over him, the spiritual life in the believer cannot die either. It is the same life source.
So to kill the Christian's grace.
You would have to kill Christ again. It is impossible.
That is a massive statement. And finally, pillar number 7, the conquest.
This is about God's sovereignty as a warrior. It's a military argument. God planted grace in your heart against the will of the devil. He planted it against the will of the world. He even planted it against the resistance of your own sinful flesh.
He invaded enemy territory to save you.
He did. He established a beachhead in your heart when you were his enemy. So Edwards argues, if God used his almighty strength to put grace there when we were hostile, he is certainly not going to let the enemy force him to take it out now that we are his children.
It becomes a matter of God's honor. He's not going to be bullied out of his own home.
That is it. He did not ask Satan's permission to save us, and he certainly does not need Satan's permission to keep us. The conquest will be seen through to the end.
So we have this fortress. We have these 7 pillars holding it up. But Edwards is a pastor at heart. He never wants this to just be a theological lecture. He wants to apply it to the people sitting in the pews and to us listening today. So let's look at the practical application he draws from this. First, he talks about understanding spiritual warfare.
This is a fascinating insight into the psychology of the devil. Edwards explains Satan's strategy based on this very doctrine. Satan knows this theology better than we do.
That's a scary thought.
It is. He knows that true conversion is the point of no return. He knows that once a soul is truly converted, they are forever out of his ultimate reach. He can harass them, he can wound them, but he cannot destroy them.
So that explains why the battle is so intense right at the gate of faith.
Exactly. If you are seeking God, or if you are on the verge of true faith, Satan will throw everything he has at you. Edward says he heaps mountains in the way. He will suggest to you that you have committed the unpardonable sin. He will try to terrify you with thoughts of God's anger. Or, and this is his most cunning trick, he will try to give you that false security we talked about, that counterfeit grace, to prevent you from getting the real thing.
Because the counterfeit inoculates you against the real disease.
Precisely. He wants to stop the spark from ever catching fire, because he knows once it truly burns, he can't put it out.
Then Edwards gives a serious warning. He speaks to the person who might be taking all this for granted.
He addresses the person with a morning cloud religion. In that climate, you would often see a thick cloud in the morning that looked like it was about to rain, but then the sun came up, the heat hit it, and it just evaporated. It vanished. No rain, no fruit.
And he says that is a picture of false grace.
Yes. If your religious experience is a morning cloud, A spike of emotion that gets you excited for a week or a month and then it vanishes, leading you right back to a carnal, worldly life. That is a serious warning sign. If the blossom falls off the tree without ever producing an apple, it was a failure of nature. It's a call to examine yourself, to make sure you're not mistaking a feeling for a new life.
But on the other side of that warning, he offers tremendous comfort to the saints. And I love the imagery he uses here.
For those who see the war of sin in their hearts but are still fighting, and that is the key, they are still fighting, he says you possess an inestimable jewel. He calls your soul a strong city. God has appointed salvation as its walls and bulwarks. And because of that, he says you can laugh at your foes.
Laugh at them.
No.
That seems bold. I don't feel like laughing when I'm being tempted.
I know. But it is not a laughter of arrogance, as if you are strong. It is a laughter of confidence in your defender. It is looking at the volcano and saying, you are hot and you are scary, but you cannot burn me. Not because I am fireproof, but because, as Edward says so beautifully, the everlasting arms are underneath me.
And that leads to the final encouragement he gives.
Yeah.
It changes how we fight the battle.
It's the soldier's mindset. Imagine two soldiers going into a battle. The first soldier goes in thinking, I am probably going to die today. Our chances are slim. We are probably going to lose. How does he fight?
He fights hesitantly. He's looking for an exit strategy. His heart isn't in it.
Exactly. He is weak before the few shot is even fired. Now imagine a second soldier. He knows for a fact that his general has guaranteed the victory. He knows he might get wounded, he might get knocked down, but the flag will be raised over that hill at the end of the day. How does he fight?
He fights like a lion. He takes risks. He pushes forward because he's not fighting for victory. He's fighting from victory.
That's it. Edward says hope is half the victory. This doctrine of perseverance doesn't make us lazy or passive. It should make us brave. Certainty breeds courage.
So to synthesize all of this, 1 Corinthians 13.7, charity endureth all things, is not just a nice motto for a wedding card. It is a divine promise that God's love in us is an indestructible, permanent reality.
It is the snowflake in the volcano that refuses to melt because the creator of the volcano is personally holding the snowflake. It brings us back to that core Reformed idea. Salvation is of the Lord from start to finish. He begins it, he sustains it, and he will finish it.
And Edwards leaves us with this final provocative thought. He suggests that our current struggles, our depressions as he calls them, the times we feel crushed and overwhelmed, are actually preparing the way for our exaltation. Just as David's time hiding in the caves prepared him for the crown, the pressure is part of the process.
Which really raises a question for every one of us listening. If you knew, if you were certain for a fact that your spiritual survival was guaranteed not by your grip on God, but by his unbreakable grip on you, how would that change the way you fight your sin tomorrow morning?
That is the question to sit with. If the outcome is guaranteed, the battle is worth fighting with everything you have. Thank you for listening to this deep dive into Reformed thinking.
Until next time.